Fashionista, fashionista, fashionista. Here I come, take a picture.
Good afternoon, good evening. You don't know what time it is. What's cracking? It's Unique Creation. Welcome back to Unique Sessions. The one I want to talk to you guys about is called Growing Pains. Oh my days, I might as well mention it. There's an album called Growing Pains, right? And it's by a rapper called J-Sun. I'm telling you guys, you need to listen to this. Growing Pains by J-Sun is banging. J-Sun, if you see this, holla out, man. No, I'm playing. But yeah, it's called Growing Pains. And what I want to talk about is the hardship of growing. Growing up is not always easy. And when I say growing up, I don't mean physically. Like, everyone grows up. You're going to grow up. There's nothing you can do physically. But I'm talking about mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. Now, that is something else. That's very, very hard. And what I actually want to touch on today is your mental and spirit. You know what? Let's just go for all round, innit? I mean, if I mention all three. Physical growth, we already know how that works. When you eat, you grow. And most times, you're mentally growing whether you like it or not. Something is feeding you, which means something is growing in your mind. Your state of mind is growing. Your view, your world view is growing based on what's been added to it, voluntarily or involuntarily. And what I want to talk about today is the pains of growing correctly. When I say growing correctly, I mean having a healthy worldview, a healthy way of thinking, a healthy spiritual life, just an all-round healthy way. Even eating physically, like your body is building itself based on what you eat. If you eat junk, then your body is built on junk. If you read junk, then your mind's filled with junk. If you pay attention to junk, then that's what's filling you up. Unfortunately, we can't always control what goes into our minds. But, hey, junk is junk. And unfortunately, we're in a world where junk seems to be the main thing that we've been filled in with these days. It's the main thing we've been filled in with. And what I wanted to point out today is, I guess, pay more attention to what you personally choose to put within yourself. Think about everything that you expose yourself with. Everything that you expose yourself with. Whether you're with people or by yourself. Prayer is important as a Christian. What I watch, what I pay attention to is important as a Christian. And even the kind of people that I hang around. For example, if you are around winners, then you're going to get some kind of winner mentality. But it's important to be around the right people. For example now, when you're with your friends, what do you talk about? What do you talk about? What comes to mind? What kind of things do you have conversations about? Is it, I don't know, trivial things, which isn't bad? Is it holidays? Is it, for example, I'm around a lot of business-minded people. So even though I'm a complete novice in business, I'm starting to understand some business etiquette. I used to be willing to chill with anyone and everyone. But I realized that's not always good for you, because the people around you really do define you. You know, have you heard the saying, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are? Actually, let me be careful about that, because one thing I want to point out is this. There's nothing wrong with having a friend that's lagging behind you. There's nothing wrong with having a friend that's lagging behind you about certain things, as long as he's willing to grow and change himself. Now that is key right there. Because I don't want you to just think, oh, yeah, Unique said this guy, so just kick. No. It's very important to know that some people are work in progress, if they choose to be. Because you could be just work, but it could also be a work in progress. We're all a work in progress in certain aspects, but it's important to put around you people who will force you to grow. Not just in any way, but in the way you want to go. For example, if you want a successful business, are you going to go to people that failed 100 times in business? Because if they failed 100 times, yeah, they learned 100 things not to do, but can they tell you one thing to do? Because you could learn not to do something, but you still ain't found the right blueprint, especially if it's constantly trying to be successful in the same place. Not to say they won't be successful eventually, but they're still finding their way. But if you go to somebody that's worked and done what's necessary to get there, that's the person you should be learning from. If you want a successful business, go to people who's been successful. If you want a successful marriage or relationship, go to people who've been in successful marriages and relationships. I mean, hearing something like, oh, I speak to this guy because he's been married and divorced 6 times, means he's been married and failed 6 times. Not to say that the person's a bad person, but they haven't been successful. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody will agree with me on this. Not everybody will agree with me, but I believe you should go to the person who's been married once and made it a long-term success, then go to somebody who's been married many times and failed many times, because they know what not to do, and they probably know what issues created the divorce, or they may not even have learned from a lesson they should have learned before they got with that person. For example, what to look for in a person. So it's very important to know who you should be around, what you should be eating, what you should be drinking spiritually, mentally, not just physically, what you should be letting into yourself. And yes, growing beyond a certain aspect is difficult. When you're learning something new, it's a challenge. When you're learning something brand new, it's a challenge. It can be difficult, especially if you're not good at it. But if you stick at it and you keep going, it will get easier. For example, I just learned to swim a few months ago. Yes, I just learned to swim a few months ago, all right? And it was difficult at first. I sniffed and drank a lot of chlorine. I was constantly drinking chlorine. I was even getting fed up. Like, why am I doing this to myself? What's the whole point of this? But sticking with it, even though it was exhausting, my teacher tried to kill me. You wouldn't believe what this dude was telling me to do. I could barely swim and it's telling me from one side to the other. Anyways, I'm digressing. What I was saying is, growing is hard. Growing is hard, but it's important to do, because the more you grow, the stronger you get. The more you grow, the wiser you get. The more you grow, the more mature you get. It's very, very, very important to keep growing, because once you stop growing, you're dead. It's not like you just stay there. To stop growing is to die. Constant growth is important. Whether it's mental, intellectual, spiritual, soulful, it's important to keep growing. Think about this. If you stop feeding your body, it starts eating itself because it needs something to feed on and eventually dies. When you stop feeding your mind, when you stop feeding your spirit, it's not a good place to be. So make sure that you're constantly growing. And even if it's painful, know that it's important. So continue to lift those weights, continue to push further, continue to learn new things that will benefit you on, continue to do things that will make you grow, even if it's painful. Trust me, growing pains are important because it makes the future you thank your past self. I've said that more than once because it's important. Have a good one. God bless you guys. Talk to you very soon. I'm Unique Creation. Y'all blessed. See you at the next lesson.
Bright lights, gold floors, pearl gates, no doors, bare heads, one cause. Everybody's looking sharp with no flaws, no dodgy cuts, just got liquor tall. Fresh new robe and you know what it's for. The amps on high, everyone's on the floor. Everybody here's just having a ball. Hands in the clouds cause we're leaving the air. All the last stressing, we're leaving it here. Your best dress doesn't even come near to the gorgeous gown that the maker prepared. I stepped in with a brand new shirt.